Alright, so I read the article, He Blew the Whistle and the Health Giants Quaked. So in this story, then James Alderson blew the whistle on a large hospital company that was committing fraud. So the hospital would keep two expense reports, one report to give to the government when they were filing their taxes, and the other that they would keep as a more conservative report. So the one they reported to the government was very aggressive in their reporting to try to maximize the benefits they would get in deductions. And then the difference between the two reports they would keep in reserves, just in their cash reserves. And then at the end of the 2 years after the time an audit could be completed, then if there was no audit, then they would just record the reserve as a revenue. And so James Alderson, when the new company came in and told him to do this, then he saw that and he's like, that's kind of looks like fraud to me. And so he wasn't going to keep the two sets of records. So he fought against the company, he lost his job, and for years it took the government a little while before they felt like they had enough backing or enough evidence to help him step in and help back him and solve the case. So I think James Alderson displayed lots of the principles of honesty, fairness, objectivity, and responsibility throughout the case. I think he stayed true to his values and recognized the unethical practice when it was presented. He mentioned it to some others and told the supervisor he's not going to keep the two sets of expense reports. So he was very honest, and he was pretty open about that he's not going to do this because he knew that he had a responsibility to present accurate reports, and he was fired when he stuck to these principles. He didn't feel good about presenting these expense reports that they weren't very honest and they weren't fair. They were skewing the numbers and committing fraud. He also showed great competence as well as credibility, and he stuck to these standards as well. So he showed great competence and credibility. And one quote from his wife, when he was putting together all these reports and going over everything, he would spend hours working on these spreadsheets. And this is after he comes back from a full-time job as well. And she said that it was basically like a second full-time job. I believe he showed great competence as well, that he worked in tax and kind of knew a lot of the laws as well. He also worked to improve his credibility. He'd go to the library and research for hours on how to present this case to the government, on what actions to take. Him and his whole family showed great confidentiality, and every time he was flying somewhere or they were going somewhere to do this, then they were having to tell people, even close family members, lies about what was going on and where they were going. And then when the case got unsealed, then they called everyone and and explained everything. They're like, we weren't doing this, this is what we were doing, and explained everything. And the case went on for 6 years. That's a lot of lying and a lot of confidentiality to keep that from, especially the really close family members or friends, to keep that from them for that long. And lastly, I believe that Alderson showed great integrity by sticking to his values and not going against what he knew was right. And what really impressed me as well with Alderson is that he displayed great perseverance. And because although it took years for it to be resolved, he stuck to the principles and standards that he knew were right and persevered through many trials. And he could have given up any time and just went about his life, but he stuck to those values. He knew what the hospitals were doing was wrong, and he knew that if he stuck to the principles and values and standards that he knew were good and to be true, then it would pay off. And so he worked really, really hard to increase his credibility. He held true to his integrity. He stayed true to the confidentiality, competence, and also was very honest, fair, and kept to the objectivity as well. And he performed a great responsibility to the shareholders of the company and the hospitals and everywhere to really show what ethical, standing up for what ethics is. And that's everything I have. Thanks.